Well, hello, friends, and welcome in to Rates and Barrels. I am not DVR. DVR is enjoying, you know, the baby, the kid, the not vacation. He was
or
just like,
not
hey,
enjoying it,
yeah,
the case maybe.
yeah, he explained to me, he was like, I got to take some time off. And then I was like, oh, is it vacation? He's like, no, I have to. The wife is going back to work. And I'm like, oh, okay. So you're just going to be working at home, just not on this current job. So
Yeah, right. The
I
dad
am
job.
filling in. I'm Chris Welsh. That is Eno Saris. And we are here to talk about the stuff and things. And we are hoping the best for our dear Derek Van Riper. Eno, you got some articles that are coming out we're going to probably be mentioning in this. And we've got a few other crazy things. And I had this crazy thing come up, and I've been dying to talk to you about it, and actually teased it on some of the other shows that I've been doing because it's such a weird concept. And the best way I can do it is just be ridiculous about it. And the concept is Statcast worthless? And of course it's not. Of course it's not. But I've had two different places that I've been doing shows with two different players present some interesting ideas of where Statcast is completely wrong. And I think there's also a building community of people that I think are still trying to comprehend, like, expected stats. And you hear a lot of analysts talking about it more. And I think maybe some old school type of people listening to fantasy get frustrated about it, but it is obviously a great tool. And obviously Statcast is not worthless, but where we're going with it today is we've got two players I want to break down with you and get your takes on them. And let's start with the hitter that was presented to me. And this is kind of a opposite take from the other guy, so this should be fun. And that hitter is Ke'Bryan Hayes. So the reason we ask, is Statcast worthless? Because when you pull up his Statcast page, it's pretty. It's pretty. It's like a very well done Christmas tree. There's like little tiny light blues with lots of red. It shines. The places that you want to be red are mostly there. The hard hit percentage, 80 percentile. He doesn't whiff. His WOBA is at least 56 percentile. His K percentage, he doesn't strike out. He walks a little bit, doesn't strike out, hits the ball really hard. His exit velocity average is top 8% in the league. His strikeout percentage is top 10% in the league. He has a 113 max EV. Oh my God, that's all awesome. But guess what? He has one homer and he's hitting 232. So we've always been kind of saying, I know I've been talking a lot here, but this is one of those guys we're always like, hey, listen, this tells a story. This could break out. This could break out. He never does. He never does. So I think people are wondering, like, what do you take out of this? Is Statcast worthless, at least in this regard?
Yeah, I think he's interesting in that, he's still 26, so there's still a chance, but it becomes less of a chance every year. And a couple of thoughts come to mind. First, when you take a screenshot of the Statcast, little bobble at the top, it sort of implies that all of the information on there is equally important. And it's just not the case. I mean, for example, the expected suite, expected WOBA, expected batting average, expected slugging, the run environment changes every year in baseball. And so the idea of what is expected given a launch angle and an exit velocity changes every year. And that's sort of redefined, I think, around the All-Star break last time I checked. So we're kind of looking at last year's numbers there in a way. And I think there's been some analysis, some research that shows that those aren't necessarily predictive. So I don't necessarily, I sometimes peek at them. I don't look at them so much. Chase rate is something we talk about a lot here. And it is important generally, but there are tons of players that have great chase rates and aren't that great, like Trent Grisham. And then there's tons of people who chase a lot and are still great. And it has a little bit more to do about longevity, like if you chase a lot, like Teoscar Hernandez I wrote about today, if you chase a lot, I don't think you're going to age that well, because at some point you can't make as much contact on pitches outside the zone. So, we kind of gone through some of these, and there's strength, like arm strength is on there. Like that's virtually meaningless for for fantasy,
Really?
right?
Are you sure? Arm strength? We can't quantify that in fantasy?
Yeah, Dansby Swanson has a limp noodle for an arm apparently, and he's still at shortstop. So, if you look at this through the lens of which number on here is shown to be the most predictive of future power, he's blue. Barrel percentage, 36 percentile.
I was just about to lead you there to say what's funny about his page specifically as we're looking at it is one thing that jumps out to you. It might be the most important. You and I were talking a little bit off air, is the most important. Let's break it down. Let's hear your take on it. But the most important thing on here is maybe the barrel percentage, even though I think in this modern era of how a lot of people are analyzing players and looking at players, I think the very first thing that we go to is hard hit percentage. It's hard hit percentage and EV. And then there's a reason it's at the very top on these. But barrel might be the one.
Well, the thing is, hard hit percentage is great. He does hit the ball hard. We know he hits the ball hard. We can see that from average exit velocity. We've seen that from max exit velocity. So there's three things there. And so they put three things that tell you the same thing. He can hit the ball hard, right? But that tells you, it sort of makes you think, oh, that must be 3 times as important. But average exit velocity hasn't been shown to be that predictive. Max exit velocity hasn't been shown that to be predictive. And we try to treat it on this podcast as upside, raw power, right?
Yeah.
And then hard hit is fine. It's better if you can lift it at all, and barrel tells you about hitting the ball hard and lifting it. So that's why it's so powerful. So, he does hit the ball hard. When I look at this, I see an athlete, and athletes are people I like to bet on. And I still think there could be a peak year in here for him. There are some things that I like that he's doing this year even. But at the same time, that sprint speed is falling. His stolen base percentage is falling. And so the thing that we always wanted was like a 2020 season. And as the stolen base, part of his game is falling off, we're likely to maybe have a peak that's like a 20 homer, 5 stolen base season. So we may never get the 2020 season we were looking for. And I have sympathy for people who are annoyed at, the Savant card or at us for liking him and for him coming up this often. And I would say that first of all, the barrel rate is the most powerful thing, and the barrel rate never liked Ke'Bryan Hayes. We liked him for other reasons because we thought he might grow into a barrel rate.
It'd have been nice if you could, how in Fangraphs you can go and you can kind of, you can customize your board and how it want to look. It'd be nice if we could kind of visually customize this middle and be like, hey, listen, I don't even want to look at average exit velocity.
Yeah, I don't want that on there. Yeah.
Yeah, it might be. Okay, but is there anything applicable here? Because what I think is, this was a listener of mine that had pointed this out to me. I thought this was a really good pick. But it's not a 1-for-1. This just happens to be one of those where we look at and we're like, man, I personally feel when I look at Ke'Bryan Hayes, you can fix this. And at some point in his career,
he's hitting the ball hard. He's not even hitting the ball on the ground as much as usual. So there's it's still catnip to me.
Yeah, but maybe it's got to be kind of more this year he's doing the same stuff. He's back to the same stuff again. It looks like there needs to be something, and you would think, by the way, that there'd be something with the Pirates, and I don't know how they exactly work in their player management, but it would be hey, we've got to figure out, how we talked in the offseason about what was Lars Nootbaar doing. He was out the whole summer working with Driveline, working on, barreling and getting those barrels to be fly balls and that type of stuff. Why is Ke'Bryan Hayes doing this?
Ke'Bryan Hayes obviously has the bat speed because he has the max exit velo, has the hard hit rate. Why can't he get that ball out in front?
Yeah, we see this is very fixable.
See the problem. It really we see that, yeah. But obviously he's been talking to people for a long time about this.
Yes, but is there anything else applicable? Because I just think he picked the right guy to have this conversation where Statcast doesn't really give us a good story.
For example, look at Mike Trout's Statcast page.
Yeah. Okay. You actually want me to? Is this rhetorical or?
No, for anybody listening, do you think Mike Trout is one of the best players in the league? I do. When I look at his Statcast page, it's all red. Yes,
94% barrel, by the way.
Yeah, 94th percentile barrel rate. And K, he always has struck out a little bit, but everything else is at the max slider, so like, it's another thing is that, we talked about this is like the model is designed to be right most of the time, and you're gonna have outliers. I think Ke'Bryan Hayes is like pretty obviously an outlier. Like, who else hits the ball hard on the ground and has just never lifted it? Even Yandy Diaz, who is kind of a clone, very similar.
Yeah, and
has
I'm
had
looking
years
here,
where he lifts it.
and I'm like looking here to try to find, even just for this year, to find big hard hit percentages with low barrel percentages. And the first guy comes up is DJ LeMahieu, who has an over 50% hard hit percentage, but he's got an under 7% barrel, which I actually feel like is a little bit higher for him this year. Ahmed Rosario is one of those guys. Seiya Suzuki, they've got really low barrel percentages with high hard hit percentages.
There's a couple things going on. Maybe they go oppo a lot. DJ LeMahieu is a spray hitter.
Yeah.
I would say, look, he has a 28% pull rate, 40% is league average, so DJ LeMahieu is hitting the ball hard on the ground opposite field, and that's why it doesn't turn into a lot of, that's slightly Ke'Bryan Hayes' problem. I think the cool thing about StatCast is you've got this spray chart right next to it, right? And the spray chart can give you a real clue as to why somebody is underperforming their sliders. So you look over at DJ LeMahieu and you see, look at that hard hit rate. That's great. Then you look at the spray chart, you go, oh, he's hitting everything hard to the other side, right? Who was the other guy? Rosario?
Yeah, I made Rosario. Really, I think he's got like
nice
a 4%.
If they had just I know launch angle is something that bothers people, and we just said that it's too much information on here, but I think with him it would be easy enough just to see either with a launch angle or a ground ball rate slider or something that he just doesn't lift the ball, Yeah. So yeah, he's hitting the ball hard straight into the ground. So he's got a similar problem to Ke'Bryan Hayes.
And nothing is a 1-for-1. Again, like, I think people should remember these are great tools, but it's not perfected. But like barrel percentage might be something that people want to put a little bit more focus on. Like you're saying, your top 10 in barrel percentage in the league right now, I'm just list them off: Aaron Judge, Matt Chapman, Matt Olson, Patrick Wisdom, Max Muncy, Pete Alonso, Sean Murphy, Jordan Alvarez, Jorge Soler, and Brent Rooker. All power, but also a lot of production in there too. Here's your bottom percent in barrel percentage. This is the top 10 is 2.5% or less. Number 1, Stephen Kwan at 1.2% barrel rate. Andres Jimenez, Miles Straw, Luis Ariz, Mauricio Dubon, Witt, Merrifield, Enrique, Isaac Paredes, Astoria Ruiz, and JP Crawford.
It's not like where I like to shop.
Yeah, well, and some of those guys like Astoria has been
enough speed or whatever.
Yeah, he's played really well. It's a crazy fact on that too. Of those top 10 I gave you, only 2 have a hard hit percentage over 30%. It's JP Crawford and Enrique Hernandez. Everybody else is under 30% hard hit rate.
And I think there's something interesting also about Miles Straw and Astoria Ruiz being in the same place. Because, you might want to say that after the year that Ruiz is having, you say, okay, well, barrel rate isn't everything, and Astoria Ruiz is somebody I want on my team, and he's if I had him on my team this year, I wouldn't have a lot of barrels, but I have 26 stolen bases. That's great, but Miles Straw is right next to him. You know what I mean? And so you have to realize that, and this might be the most controversial thing I'll say, is that I think a player's power ceiling determines their entire ceiling as a player. And that, and if you have no power, you are relegated to the guys who are up and down and who are like sometimes useful and sometimes not. So even if Ruiz has a great year this year, I'm probably not going to have him next year.
But so
he's just not my type of player. I want players with power.
And Ruiz has one of the worst average X. I know you said it's not predictive, but like it's a little predictive when it's like 84 miles, but it's like one of the worst in baseball. His average EVs. Is your dictation of said power built more off of max EV raw power, or is it like you're saying barreling? Like barreling is the most important piece of you judging power.
The two things I look at them in descending order, where barrel rate is the thing I look at the most, and then max EV and hard hit rate are what I look at next. because and probably max EV is last. As much as we talk about it on this show, max EV is just something I look at to describe what I think is the potential for the player, right? And at some point you start, like, that's another thing that's going on with Ke'Bryan Hayes, is at some point you stop worrying as much about the potential and start looking at actual results, because there are going to be players that just never reach their potential, right? Whatever it is.
Yeah. It's like the real world. Like, start getting real. We got to start getting real.
You got to start. Yeah. You got to start getting real. Like when you're 2,500 plate appearances into a player's career, you got to stop kind of being like, buddy has a good max EV, you know?
Yeah. Well, and we had that, you and I were talking off air, this like analogy too, that people get very hung up on specifics of like this would be the instance. And you just got to remember, like, it's all best odds, you know, it's all a math thing. And we likened it to like poker, where it's like, hey, listen, you can have the best hand and someone can have a 9% chance with one out left and they can hit that. And it's like, well, I should have won. I had a set of aces, and this guy, you know, 25% or 15% chance to hit a club on the river, and he got his flush to be, I was winning the whole way. My odds kept getting better and better, and then it just didn't work out. That's kind of like what the predictive process is. The same thing with baseball. It's like best guesses. It's math telling us stories. It's the same thing that Derek Carty has dealt with like the constant barrage he gets about like projections and stuff. And it's like some things are right, things are wrong. But at the end of the day, the math, like anything, stuff right plus
more often than you're wrong.
It's just trying to put you in the best situation, and hopefully you've built up enough analysis to kind of decipher. And it's like, hey, listen, we're gonna jump on a player, and you're gonna be like, hey, listen, I see all this stuff with Ke'Bryan Hayes. I love it. I think it's one fix away. I'm gonna make the bet. I think he can improve. And then guess what? He doesn't. It still doesn't.
There's another analogy to poker that's interesting, is that, like, you know, I don't want to say that I'll never have a Miles Strawian player on my team. And in fact, Miles Straw's, stock has fallen so far himself that, you know, I may pick up some shares of Miles Straw next year because the price will drop. And so you think about that analogy you have where it's like, you know, this person stayed in on something he shouldn't have. He wouldn't have stayed in if the price got too expensive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you went all in and this guy's looking at 2 4s, he's not going to stay in. You know what I mean? So there is a relationship between price and how in you should be. So, like, I am saying that Miles Straw is not my type of player, and Story Reeves is not my type of player. But if next year Miles Straw is a bench round pick, or somebody I can pick up for $3 in the AL only league, heck yeah, man, I'm back in. You know what I mean? Ke'Bryan Hayes at this point next year may go undrafted in a lot of leagues in NFBC. Would I love to put Ke'Bryan Hayes as my bench CI? You know, just to give him a shot for 2 or 3 weeks and say, is this the year that Ke'Bryan Hayes does the Yandy Diaz, you know, and actually lifts the ball a little bit and gives me batting average and power? Then yeah, that's worth, you know, $1 or $2 or a bench pick. But
you know, that's actually a really interesting thought too. Like, what if Ke'Bryan Hayes does the Yandy path over years, where it's just like the hard hit that keeps going, and then it's going to take the 1 year to click. Unfortunately,
I mean, Yandy Diaz's best year is happening at 31 years old.
Yeah, that's why I said in the Ke'Bryan Hayes thing, I believe there will be a year where it breaks. And he's 26 years old. He will break 28, 29. That's why it's like redraft. Probably not. I see no sign of improvement here. And in this case, he's a specific case of StatCast being worthless in this point because it didn't work out. Let's move to the other one.
Somewhat interesting in Dynasty and like Keeper because they've still got these skills. But yeah, totally.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Like he's actually someone probably in the offseason, if it keeps getting bad, it's like
prioritize what you're looking at when you're looking at the Savant page for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so now let's go to part 2 of is StatCast worthless? And I should have done this with Ke'Bryan Hayes. I didn't for the video people. I'm going to bring this up on screen here. And I present to you, I will bring it up on screen if it wants to go, Bryce Elder. This was one I was tweeted about. And let's see, this was from Baseball Doesn't on Twitter and saying, is StatCast data pointless? We're calling it, is it worthless? Because Bryce Elder, it is shorter sample sizes, is one of the craziest looking pages too, because it is the Arctic. It is blue across the board. The only thing he doesn't do is walk a whole bunch of guys, but from hard hit to expected batting average to strikeout percentage to fastball velo, fastball spin extension, it is all some of the worst you can see in baseball. But the guy has a 2 ERA in 10 starts this year, 51 strikeouts, and under 1.2 whip, and is 3-0. So I have some feelings and thoughts on his actual pitch mix here, but I present to you again, is Statcast worthless when it comes to a player like Bryce Elder or anybody? We don't have to, but this is the example of where it does not, there are two conflicting stories here.
I don't ever look at the sliders for a pitcher on Statcast.
Ever.
I am now looking at this. I don't know if it's like the first time that I'm like taking it all in, but like if you had asked me before the show what's on a pitcher's Statcast percentile rankings, I would not have been able to tell you. Looking at it now, it's just not useful to me to know these things like in the way that they are presented. Again, extension, usually good, not always good. Fastball velocity, okay, I'd actually have that on there, and it's important because if I look now at starters with the worst fastball velocity, they are Rich Hill, Kyle Freeland, Zach Greinke, Trevor Williams, Austin Gomber, Bryce Elder, Jordan Lyles. Do you want these guys?
Yeah, no.
You don't go shopping in this bin, not normally. So, that's a useful thing to have on the slider. But pitcher average exit velocity allowed is, I'm not going to be rude. I'm just going to
be a little rude if you want.
I don't. It never. And like, apologies are a little bit due. Alex Chamberlain's done some really good work on like what pitchers can control, and there's a little bit of something there. I think it's related to command. There's something there. So I would say like there's a little whiff of like he has good command that you can get out of that. But I'm sure that there are tons of people on average exit velocity allowed that won't be there next month, is my point. A hard hit allowed is just another way of saying average exit velocity. In this case, I don't think that's useful. I don't know what xERA is. I don't use it. I can't imagine that XBA and exit slugging are that useful for pitchers because they're derived off of exit velocity and hard hit, so not useful. Barrel rate allowed for pitchers, not a thing that is sticky year to year, not a thing that is predictive. So we just went through the first 6 things on the page, and I don't think any of them are predictive. Now you get to K minus BB. Well, that's K. You were talking about like, what would this look like if we did our own? I would have K minus BB, whiff, and fastball velocity on there. And that might be I'd only have those 4 things out of all that they have on there.
Really, that would be how you would switch up this board.
Yeah. And so 40th percentile K, 67th percentile BB, and 49th percentile whiff tells you at almost what you're like. I haven't said the word yet, but I'm going to now. His stuff plus is bad, but you can see that. I do like this pitch distribution thing. You can see that. He has a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. He has an 82-mile-an-hour slider. Sliders are good better over 85. Fastballs are better over 93, 94. So all this is to say that I don't necessarily believe in Bryce Elder, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with his Savant page. But there are some hints of it on the Savant page. If you want me to give you what I think Bryce Elder is, 2022 AAA, 4.46 ERA, 119 WHIP, 8 Ks per 9. That's who I think he is.
One thing that I found interesting about Bryce Elder is you talked about it. The problem is the stuff in general, like I respect and I value Stuff Plus on the value of the pitches individually, and I think it's a good metric. Actually, I would love to see, for my own personal reference, if we're talking about what would I like to see on my own like Savant page, give me personal pitch Stuff Plus on there to see the value of each pitch and the overall. But you're not going to get great numbers out of him. One thing I do think that's interesting though is his pitch distribution, that he's become a primary slider pitcher. He's almost 40% slider, where he was 27% last year. And the reason behind it is like, we've seen so much of this. And I likened him to Johan Oviedo, that he's like the Braves Oviedo, where, you know, he's found success off of also throwing strikes. And that's what Elder's doing. He has an over 50% zone percentage with that slider. And he's able to throw that thing 4 strikes, even if it's not whiffs, which is just going to keep people off of the sinker fastball a little bit more, which at the end of the day, I think makes him like, maybe he's in between like streamer and someone in a deeper league you can hold for a while. It could get messy because the pitches themselves aren't fantastic. But I feel like so many pitchers have found success not being primary fastball guys when it stinks and using their secondaries. And the thing that whether the pitch is good or not, he's throwing it for strikes and guys aren't getting great reads on it, which I think makes Elder interesting. But none of that is expressed in breaking down his Savant page. What did I have to do? You know, I had to drag down. I had to go down to pitch distribution.
Mix. You had to, you know, there are definitely things on this page that I love. Yeah. I'm not saying that I don't like the whole page. I'm talking mostly about that top part.
Yeah, exactly. But that I think is the key, because we've just spent, you know, half the show talking about this, but I thought it was a really cool topic.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yes, that's true for everybody. Like, it's a fantastic resource for sure.
Yeah, but my point is, to end it, is when you say, is Statcast worthless? I think the percentile board that you guys screenshot is more worthless than what you're making out Statcast to be. The guy asked the question, is this worthless? But no, the problem is because everybody wants to have fun. How many times a day do you see someone go, whose Statcast page is this? And it's like, here's all these things, and everyone wants to play that game. It's because the player is being valued off of a percentile board, which one of the smartest baseball minds, Eno, has said like maybe 25% of what's on that is actually good. So maybe it would be a lot less worthless if we could customize those boards a little bit. But no, it's not worthless, because you can do so much research. It's great. And there's a lot of great places. You know, Pitcher List has done a great job of, you know, enabling their pages to work more, and maybe it's more customizable. But no, the idea of it is not. But maybe like a nice little handy screenshotted board is a little bit more worthless in totality.
There's a last little bit that is more sort of philosophical, and I think you might have an interesting perspective on this, sort of looking at prospects a lot, which is Statcast. I think that where it shines the best is measuring athleticism. Right? We're talking about how hard can you hit it? How hard can you throw it? How fast can you run? You know what I mean? Like, and it's really a scouting tool in a way, in that it's an offshoot of the radar gun. You know, I've said this about Stuff Plus too. Stuff Plus was born in the radar gun. You know, we're just trying to make the radar gun better by including movement and stuff, right? And so, you know, when you're looking at a Statcast page, you're looking at a lot of measures of athleticism. How many, like, if you were scouting prospects, there are prospects that you scout that aren't athletic or don't look that athletic and yet still succeed, right?
Yeah.
Have you thought about that? Like, do any names come to mind? Are there ones that weren't athletic and succeeded in the minor leagues that didn't make it in the major leagues, and their athleticism proved to be a problem? I mean, like, athleticism is almost like what I was saying about the power upside. Like, your athleticism does determine how good you can be. It's hard to be one of the top 5 players in the game without being athletic.
Well, here's maybe like I'm not quite answering your question, because I'd have to really probably sit on it, but like, let me throw it.
Something to think about for Project Prospect on Tuesday.
Yeah, but let me throw this on this other side here. You look, and people are gonna LOL, but whatever. Look at a player like Corbin Carroll. You physically look at Corbin Carroll, that is not the type of guy that you.
I'm surprised. He's a little bit small.
He's much small. He's the type of guy that in your brain, if you were to just start stereotyping, you're like, that's a 5% barrel rate, a higher ground ball rate. It's a Story Ruiz. It's a Story Ruiz. Yeah. Well, guess what? When you can look at the numbers, this 5'10", a $165 outfielder who every single person argued with me, oh, he's not going to hit for power. He's not going to hit for power. Whether what we just talked about or not. Actually, let's get
his stat page.
Well, I have it up, but you know what? I had it on the wrong page because I want to pull this up here because
it's all red, baby.
It is all
here's a superstar athlete.
Yeah. And okay, so now I've got it. So let me pull it up on screen so the video people can go with me. This isn't answering how you wanted the question of like on the opposite, but this is a guy that physically doesn't look at, and look at that Savant page. It is red beyond belief. A 5'10", 165 guy with a max EV that is in the 93rd percentile of the league. He's 100% sprint speed, one of the fastest. Barrel percentage isn't the best, but it is, starting to get into the red. There isn't a blue thing outside of, guess what? Arm strength, which who cares? Who cares about that?
And so you could put two Corbin Carrolls into Mike Trout, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. So this is one of those guys that you physically go watch play and you're like, wow, this guy's really impressive. You physically look at him and you're like, where's the projection? But then you get this story told under where you're like, holy crap, he barrels, he runs, he hits the ball hard, whether it's average or max EV. He does all of the things despite what you would physically see out of him. And that's unfortunately in the minors, a story that you wouldn't be told outside of just watching him, because we don't get like high A, some people do if you've got, I'm forgetting the company that has it, but it's like a team oriented stuff where you get all the StatCast information. This is something we would just physically see, but so many people that I talk to would argue about Corbin Carroll's projection because of what he physically looks like. And he destroyed every single one of those, but it's something that would have been found on the underlying stats. So I went in a different direction of what you asked.
But that's why I like objective stats like this, because, another thing is athleticism doesn't always look the same way. I mean, if you look at Joey Votto's 2022 Savant page, there's a lot of red and a lot of blue because he's old and he's not a good defender and he's doesn't run fast and, but is he still athletic in terms of, being able to see the ball really well and being able to hit the ball really hard? So there's different definitions of athleticism that come into play here. But I still maintain that Savant is so powerful because it's directly observing things. And so, there is that relationship, as you get more of a sample of results, like Ke'Bryan Hayes, of actual on the field results, you start pairing that. And that's why in the end, projection systems that include Stuff Plus or projection systems that include Savant are going to be the most powerful projection systems, because they're going to take, we've got some observed results on the field. We can take something out of this. There is something about how his athleticism translates to the field, but there's also the underlying athleticism that we can actually say, we can put his sprint speed in. We can put his arm strength in if we care, like if it moves the needle at all, like on his defensive projections or whatever. So like, it is still supremely powerful in terms of like just looking at it and then telling. It's the same thing as stuff. It's really the same thing as Stuff Plus. You can't just look at Stuff Plus and be like, I'm going to tell you everything about this player. Elder probably has good command, probably has a good slider. Some guys who have good sliders have outperformed the model. Robbie Ray was outperforming the model in terms of, just throwing the slider a ton. Like sometimes if you just throw a slider a ton, you can do well. But I will say that I'm fading Bryce Elder partially due to some things that are on that StatCast page. And I'm still somewhat interested in Ke'Bryan Hayes, partially due to some stuff that's on that StatCast page, even as I have sat here and slagged the top half of the StatCast page for the last 20 minutes.
Yeah, I think the percentile screenshot is is the same version of small sample size. You know, it's like you're looking at one thing and you're like, you think
Without
that
context,
is StatCast,
right?
Yeah, exactly. Like everything is within context. Like small sample sizes tell us a story, but it doesn't tell us the whole thing on the whole season. And you go through and like, what's more powerful than every piece of information you can get on StatCast? So I think it's the way, and it's also kudos to everybody else because so many more people are in line with wanting to know more and are digging deeper. And people sometimes are asking it in a good way, like this, like, hey, is this worthless? And these players, and then sometimes it's just people that are just like, why are we talking about expected stats? Why are we doing that? Why are we doing that?
That's true. I've seen some real pushback against expected stats, and we don't use expected stats too much here, but we do use projections, and I've even seen some pushback against projections, but I will go to the mat for projections because projections take a lot of that information and put it into context, and that's why they're so valuable. They can say, oh, max EV is not that powerful, but it's a little bit powerful, so we'll put a little bit of it in. Barrel rate's super powerful, we're going to put a lot of that in. That's why projections are so cool.
Projections definitely put you more at the poker table because now I'm not the biggest. I don't create projections. I don't live and die by projections.
We have like 6 projection systems on Fangraphs. You can pick your poison.
But I like them. And what I feel is that's where it puts me with all of the cards in the deck. And now I understand. And then I create the hand and I understand my percentages better.
Right. And then you can start being like,
exactly.
My price to stay in on the Ke'Bryan Hayes and see what the river looks like on Ke'Bryan Hayes has dropped to the point where, I'm in. I know it's not great overall, but my price to stay in is good. I'm in. Or if the price to stay in is bad and so everyone's going all in on, Bobby Witt in a second year or somebody like that where you're like, oh, some of the stuff's not so good. I don't like this price. I'm not staying in to see this river,
Yeah.
So,
it's like projections tell you what game you're playing. It's like if you think you're playing Texas Hold'em, but they're really going Omaha and you're now getting 4 cards, it changes it. So it's going around. Okay. So this leads into another great question. I know we were going to talk about a player that was going to lead into this, but let's just do this because we've talked about Stuff Plus and we're kind of on a roll. We are going to go through a few players, hopefully, but I hope you guys are enjoying this. We had a great listener question and DVR and I were talking about this earlier in the week. And this was about Stuff Plus variance. So this is from Eric and he goes, I really enjoy your podcast. Thanks for the really interesting analysis. And he says, my dog gets extra long walks when I'm listening to your show. So shout out to Eric's dog. He says, I have a question for the mailbag if you have time. Have you done or are you aware of any longitudinal analysis of Stuff Plus? I didn't say that right. Over the course of the season, for example, are there pitchers that tend to maintain Stuff Plus consistency over starts better than others? Any common characteristics amongst pitchers who improve Stuff Plus in the season? Thank you, Eric.
Yes and no. The whole idea of Stuff Plus is that when you're looking at a given pitch type, it does not change much over the season. In terms of stabilization points, it's 18 fastballs. Before Stuff Plus is basically online for a pitcher. And then you'll be like, well, I don't know. Guys have changed their Stuff Plus over this course year. How could that be right? One, we have to altitude adjust Stuff Plus because everybody who went to Mexico City just got super dinged. So that's something that's in the works. That's something we can improve. 2, the easiest way to change your Stuff Plus is to change your mix. It's super easy to do it that way. Just think about it. Start emphasizing a pitch that does well and de-emphasizing a pitch that doesn't do well in Stuff Plus. Your Stuff Plus is going to go up because Stuff Plus is an amalgamation of all the separate pitches. So that's why I think it is powerful to have the separate pitches out like that. And it is sometimes useful to just go through, different profiles. That's why I talk about a lot on this podcast about how I like pitchers with large arsenals because they have a chance to, promote one pitch, demote another, play around with that pitch mix and change their overall Stuff Plus, change their overall outlook. Somebody like Hunter Green and Graham Ashcraft are guys that look so great in Stuff Plus and haven't been looking that great on the field. Well, neither one of them has a third pitch. And what you see is they have a really hard time getting through the 5th and 6th and, getting to the 5th inning even. They can go real well for 3 or 4 innings and then they fall apart. So there is a relationship to the size of arsenal and your ability to change it. And, this comes up a little bit with Bryce Miller, who is shoving. Apparently he's shoving on a basis that we haven't ever seen before. Let me get this codified tweet up real quick.
Yeah, I've got one from Slangs on Sports if you want real quick too.
Okay,
I can read it off. It's Bryce Miller has his 5 consecutive outings of 6+ innings pitched and 5 or fewer base runners is 1 outing shy of tying the longest such streak since 1901. Who a couple other players that have 6: 2022 Jacob DeGrom, 2022 Shane McClanahan, 2016 Clayton Kershaw, and 2015 Zach Greinke. The difference, though, those were at any point in their career. This is to start Bryce Miller's career. So this has been trying to kind of weigh how big he's been. And if you didn't pay attention last night against the A's, it's really good to pitch against the A's. He went 6 innings, gave up only 2 hits. I think he walked his first batter, struck out another 6, and he absolutely pops on the Stuff Plus. I was looking over on Fangraphs, and he's 8th, at least this was as of last night, in Stuff Plus. I had to change the qualifications of innings pitch. I think I did it like 20 or something. And he was 8th in Stuff Plus overall at 122. His fastball hit a 130 Stuff Plus, and which was top 6, by the way. And his slider was over 120, which he barely uses. And that was what I was tripped out about, was I just don't know how he keeps doing it, because it was 80+% fastball last night. And is this so much of like, I think he said it like, hey, why am I going to stop using my fastball because no one can hit it? Or is this so much about like, this guy really is going to try to live 75% fastball? Because, you talk to him and he's still kind of toying with the sliders and the curveball still kind of getting used to. I just don't know how much more is in the works for us this year and how can he keep maintaining. He's an anomaly.
Yeah. And, just after talking about sort of having a wide mix, he's got 4 pitches. The curve and the change are below average, but close enough to average that you can believe in him, but he's not using them. I think he falls into the type of player that I fall in love with, which is big fastball and big mix, like Brandon Woodruff has a similar 4-seam fastball Stuff Plus, has a 111 slider Stuff Plus, and a 106 changeup Stuff Plus. Brandon Woodruff throws his fastball a lot, and he loves it, and that's good. But I do think there's the mix and the command there behind it that if there is a day where somehow they are squaring up his fastball, he has other options to go to. There's also a thing going on here with Bryce Miller that's kind of interesting, is that his slider does really well by Stuff Plus, but he's thrown 65 of them, and he's only gotten 8% whiffs on it so far. And I don't know exactly what to do with that. 32% fouls is a lot. And in terms of like what they're doing with the pitch, they're hitting 071 on the slider. But it's fair for people to wonder, is this pitch going to continue to be good? I would say Stuff Plus it says it's going to be good, but I have noticed, I was watching the last start, sometimes I feel like there's an auto take from pitchers, and he threw a slider that was like 2 inches off the bottom of corner of the strike zone, and the batter didn't even flinch at it.
Was it early in a count or something? Like, why? How would they even? How would there be an auto take on especially a slider when that mix is always fastball? What do you think the auto take was a certain point in the at bat, or you think like they just have a good read on the slider and no one's touching it? That makes sense how I said that?
Yeah. I don't know. Can you show our readers this thing? I put it in the chat.
Yeah, let me.
I don't know how fast that you can do that, but
it should be pretty quick here. Okay, so this is a player card from Bryce Miller and on screen now.
Yeah, so if you can see the dots there, those are his release points, and they're different. He has a different, it's pretty like they're different for each pitch, and they're
you would want these to all be kind of hugging.
Yeah. But I've looked into release point consistency. I've seen other people do research on it, and I haven't found anything predictive there. I also think, highlight that 4-seam, now highlight the slider. I mean, what's the difference there?
Yeah, let's see.
5, 6, 3. So
it was 5.63 average vertical release
5.87.
point and minus 1.03 average horizontal,
So
5.87 vertical release on the fastball, minus 0.78 horizontal release point.
So that's 3 inches, 2.9 inches.
Wow.
Do you think a hitter can see that?
You would think so. You would think. Well, you know what's so interesting about this too is his fastball. It's so crazy because I said this on CBS.
It's so good. I mean,
there was this one pitch. It was one specific pitch last night, and I forgot for life of me. I can't remember who it was against, Ramon Laureano or something, and it was only like a 94-mile-an-hour fastball. But you would think he threw it 127 miles an hour. How late the pitcher or the hitter was, and he threw it dead center in the zone. It was just right down the freaking middle, 94 miles an hour. And the guy was so far behind it when he throws almost 80% fastballs. And there's something about the whip in his release. And maybe it's the high point as we're looking, at this player card, we're looking at where he releases it. There's something that it does to the fastball that makes it better. But to your point, it does stand. This is a pretty dramatic. I wonder, I'd love to almost see, like, should I type in somebody? I would like to see the release point of somebody else that kind of shows like
DeGrom.
Okay.
DeGrom's always the guy.
Will he come up if I type him up here at the top, or?
I think so, yeah.
How will this work? Jacob DeGrom, pitcher card. Let's see if I can do this. I don't ever go on Brooks.
To scatter charts.
Scatter chart. Okay.
And then put vertical release point, put y-axis vertical release point.
Let's see, where is that?
You were right there. Y-axis vertical release point.
Oh, vertical release point. Okay.
And then go down to the next one, x-axis.
And then
horizontal
vertical
release point. Horizontal.
Horizontal. Okay.
No, that's horizontal movement.
Oh, whoops.
Horizontal release point.
Okay. Bear with us here.
I mean, those are hugging.
I mean, okay, so if you're watching on the video, which, by the way, you should go subscribe to the Rates and Barrels YouTube channel. No reason not to check it out.
Oh, and do a quick date selector. Just do this year. The very top.
Let's see. Quick date selector, just 2023.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a great example difference of what Eno is trying to prove here.
Yeah.
These babies are a bunch of paint just all in the same spot. I mean, these are within point. Like, if you want an example here, curveball, average vertical release point.
Don't do curveball because that's always going to be the craziest. Do fastball slider.
Okay, so
right on top of each other.
They're so close I can't even.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Slider is 5.79 vertical release point. I just want to point out
too.
Yeah, I mean this is crazy. They're within 0.10 of every single pitch. Where we saw, what did you say?
0.3 inches difference.
And you saw 3 inches of difference between each pitch. It looked like for Bryce Miller,
and specifically the fastball slider. So there could be something there, but that fastball is so good and the pitches are so good. And they're still hitting 0.071 when they do swing. I know batting average on a pitch type, it's small sample, noisy, but like they're not succeeding on it. They're just taking it a little bit. And I think even if they start taking it, like he can throw it in the zone more.
So are you like a buy that this is going to maintain the rest of the year, even without the secondaries right now?
I love him. Okay. I love him.
I love Lamp. I love you. I love Bryce Miller. It will be good to see. He's gone up against I think the Braves is his biggest competition. So it'll be good to see when it's 2 of those starts have come against the A's. Not to
I think the Astros will be interesting because they have like a really aggressive coaching style of they also are high ball hitters that all have like a target the top half of the ball against a rise ball guy. Like Bregman has a very specific plan against rise ball guys. So I think an Astro start would be a big test for him.
The only thing I guess I didn't follow up now, I don't want to move past this. Going back, last thing to the release point of all those pitches and how different they are. Is that the thing that makes you worry about why there's an ineffectiveness? So like, let's say people start hitting the fastball and he's like, okay, now I do have to adjust, that he might struggle if it has to go more curve, more slider, because the release points are so different and it might be viewable to more advanced hitters. Like, do you think when he comes off of heavy fastball, if he does, that's going to lead to more problems? Because I think if you were to say like, oh, hey, Bryce Miller can go to 3 other pitches. If he starts getting hit, everyone would be like, oh, this is awesome. This feels good. But are you worried that once those start to go in, hitters are really going to be able to kind of tell what's coming in, and he might get hit up more than we're ready for? Again, I don't know if I made sense in how I said that.
No, it's the only thing that bothers me about him. But I will say that there's a person on his team that kind of tells you a lot about where a player can go with this profile. So in 2021, Logan Gilbert had a 12% whiffs on the four seam, and the slider was okay, but he didn't really have whiffs on the curve. In 2023, Logan Gilbert is getting fewer whiffs on the fastball because it's not quite as good, but he's still getting a lot of whiffs on the fastball, and now he's getting whiffs on a slider, a curve, and a split. So, it's nice to just have the foundational pitch, right? Like, he's got a great fastball. And he's got good command.
Yeah. I love the long term.
Yeah, exactly. I love the long term. I love the short term, the medium term. Maybe there'll be struggles, but almost every starter has some point where they struggle. Maybe he, instead of throwing the kind of sweeper 2-plane curveball, he goes to more of a gyro, whatever. Like, he has learned 3 sliders. He knows a true sweeper that's sideways that we don't even see that much in the big leagues. He has this 2-plane curveball that he throws that's called a slider right now, and then he also has like a gyro slider. So, or he has a curve. I don't know. He has 3 breaking balls.
He calls it a gyro. He told me
Yeah.
He says I have 2 sliders in his mind because he definitely has a curveball. He says he has a sweeper and a gyro, but he's uncomfortable with throwing the gyro right now.
Right. So, but that's 3 avenues forward. Great fastball, 3 breaking balls he's thrown before, a changeup that looks at least average. I don't know, man. That's something I'm betting on.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Another guy I wanted to bring up because of some interesting changes, Michael Kopech. Michael Kopech in his start on Wednesday, 7 innings, gave up only 2 hits, walk 1, 9 strikeouts, 16 whiffs. Overall on the season, by the way, fastball 9th stuff plus, which I thought was interesting. Lance Brozdowski, who we've talked about, had an interesting tweet about Michael Kopech's release point was down around 3 to 4 today relative to his average over his prior 3 starts. He was able to maintain the shape of it, which was 17.5 IVB, and he picked up a mile per hour of velo and added 1 on the arm side run. Also, you saw 2 miles per hour uptick on his sliders. So is what Michael Kopech adjusted and changed to something to buy in on? Are you buying in back on Michael Kopech? Because he's available in some leagues out there.
Yeah, it's really interesting that he just had the 2nd or 3rd most horizontal movement on his four seam in his career, and of any game in his career, and improved his changeup run in the process by doing that. And maintained decent vertical movement, especially when you consider that if you look at sort of Brooks for vertical movement or something, that is not adjusted for release height. So he maintained like decent vertical movement and lowered his release point, which means that his vertical attack angle is better, right? If you think about it, if you have the same amount of movement from a lower point, you're staying straighter. In terms of just geometry and physics. So I don't know. I see this guy as somebody that I bet on. I dropped Roansy Contreras 2 weeks ago for Michael Kopech in TGFBI. And it felt a little aggressive at the time, but I saw that Kopech had, I think it was Detroit and Cleveland coming up. And I saw that Kopech's, his stuff plus on the fastball and the slider are good, and his curveball and change are near average. He's actually reminds me, without looking at anything else, he reminds me a little bit of Miller, right? He's got this big fastball, and he's trying to figure out the other pitches. If this newer release point makes his other pitches better, like his changeup better, then I think that's great. But generally, he's somebody that I bet on just due to the stuff, with an eye towards the schedule. So I want to, while you give me your thoughts on him. I want to look at the schedule and see if I can figure out where he's starting next.
Yeah, I'm encouraged by the adjustments. I mean, what I'm also fascinated by, not to like not answer your question, but is
Again.
the amount. Yeah, again, I do that, turn it into something else. But like these guys that are making in-season adjustments, I feel like that was something that so many people didn't want to do like 10 years ago. And I'm thinking about changing a release point mid-year this year, and thinking about, you tweeted about Logan Webb toying with a new grip on a slider and like doing that in season. I think is so fascinating, the amount of these guys that are making these changes, which is also why like a sample of what we've seen is not a dictation to what the whole year can be if so many players are willing to make changes on a dime right now.
And it is this change in pitch mix and sometimes the change in actual what the pitch is. Last 400 pitches and Stuff Plus has a little bit more signal than full season Stuff Plus. So we're now getting into the part of the season where you can look at last month with the slider on Fangraphs, look at last month's Stuff Plus and see if you see a change. Kopech next week has a 2-step. Angels at home, Tigers at home.
Ooh.
I'm in.
Okay. I think I'm in. I mean,
the Angels is a little bit scary, but the Tigers is not. And it's a 2-step. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. After that, Marlins at home. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mariners in Seattle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You don't get till June 21 and the Rangers at home where I get at all nervous. So
pretty good month run. Michael Kopech moving up ranks, I think. And especially if he can maintain whatever this new release point is, it seems to be effective. It would only be appropriate because I'm here to talk about one prospect. We'll do real quick. I just wanted to bring this to attention because we had just talked about him and Eno was like, I don't know so much about this guy, but Andrew Abbott, who was definitely a product of the tack ball in AA, comes up to AAA.
Had like insane strikeout numbers, like 20 K9 in AA with the tack ball.
Bonkers. So he had he literally had a 20K per 9. Well,
I think he had like a 22 IVB or something, or 21 or something crazy.
Yeah, it was like it was like 19 or 20 or something like that. But on Wednesday, 21 whiffs in AAA. He went 6 1/3, give up only 2 hits. He did walk 3, struck out 9. Now 5 of 6 AAA games, he has 7 or more strikeouts. So as much as he definitely took advantage of the attacked ball in AA, AAA, you're seeing the strikeout numbers maintain again, and he far and beyond. I believe the next most whiffs in AAA yesterday were 14, and he had 21. This was against the Mets AAA team, which, down some talent that they were putting out there. But I was just curious at any thoughts. I think you might have even pulled up some of the Stuff Plus numbers. I know he hasn't been popping like crazy, but on pay, this is another one of those where it's like, Stuff Plus isn't telling a big story about him where his stats are pretty robust in the minor leagues. And he does look like he's getting close to a major league stint if the Reds are, if they're trusting. They keep bringing up arms, so he seems to be next in line.
I think the Stuff Plus numbers actually match the Fangraphs grades on the different pitch types fairly well. Fangraphs gave him a 50 fastball. I've got a 90 Stuff Plus on the 4-seam. Those are possibly compatible, especially since we don't know when they gave him the 50, on the fastball, right? The curveball 55-60, I've got a 108 Stuff Plus, so that's his best pitch, and it's in line with that. And then this is where it might get a little bit controversial because you were saying that his changeup was getting a lot of whiffs. Fangraphs has a 40 to 45 on the changeup, and I've got an 89 Stuff Plus on the changeup for him. So, the model is not always as great on changeups, but it matches the scouting grade they put on him. Did you say that he got a bunch of whiffs on the changeup?
He did, and of course I went away from the page, and we all know it's Baseball Savant, so it would take me into the next show to be able to pull it up. But yes, I believe, if I remember correctly, I want to say it was an 80% whiff rate on the changeup. He had like 4+ whiffs, I think, on every single pitch. And he always did this weird Statcast thing where 25% of his pitches were under unknown with no information. I'm assuming that was like a variance between his fastball and sinker or whatnot because the other pitches were there. But yeah, he was very effective on all 3 pitches.
Yeah, and that unknown, by the way, is gonna mess up Stuff Plus.
Interesting.
If that's a hard pitch, Stuff Plus measures off the fastball. So if that's a hard pitch, there's 20, that's 25, and the very least it's 25 points of data that we don't have in Stuff Plus.
And I believe he had 12 whiffs off the fastball. I might be actually making up the curve and changeup being crazy effective. I know they were good, but again, I'm just trying to remember this. I think 12 whiffs came off the fastball, but another 5 came off of this unknown pitch. So if that were a fastball, that would be 17.
A cutter? If that's a cutter, that's a hard pitch that goes in with the fastballs. So I would say that there's still a fair amount of unknown. It's a little bit annoying to me, but you always have to treat AAA Stuff Plus as not as robust as Major League Stuff Plus, because they just don't clean the data as much. So we got 25 points of data from his last start that are not in here. So I would say that the scouting grades matching up with the Stuff Plus is interesting. The 30 present, 45 future command on Andrew Abbott with the walk rates that he's shown twice. In his biggest samples, he's given up a 10% plus walk rate. I would say that this is not, I'm not sure that's of the class of Bryce Miller, Bobby Miller, Taj Bradley, Tanner Bybee. I hesitate to put him in that group.
And he's going to be pitching with the Reds, so we'll have to see how that goes.
Pitching in Cincinnati.
It's not great.
One of the toughest parks in the big leagues, if not the toughest. I mean, it's right there, top 3 toughest.
Yeah. What's up with that guy? Part 2. You can check it out. It's Eno's examination of 7 struggling hitters, which is available on The Athletic right now. And guess what? If you go to theathletic.com/ratesandbarrels, you can sign up for less than $2 a week. That is a current deal I see right here on here. So you can go and do that. You can sign up under the Rates and Barrels code, or you can just go find the article, go to Eno's Twitter handle at @EnoSaris, and you can go and you can have fun and you can pick around. You can check out the articles, click there and sign right up. You can check out those struggling hitters. You can find him
Turner, Jeremy Pena, a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah, there are a lot of good names in there too. And I've been kind of honed in on Trey Turner. I ran a poll about Trey Turner versus Bobby Witt. So I think all of those things kind of combine fun. You can find me on Twitter at @IsItTheWelsh, Eno at EnoSaris, of course, and I believe you and Al will be rocking it on Friday. Good thoughts to DVR that he's getting some sleep during this time. And thank you, friends, for hanging out with us, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll talk to you next time right here on Rates and Barrels.
Thanks for listening.